Hey guys, it's HydraTek here, and in this tutorial video I want to break down one preset I've chosen from my latest unpack called Cypher, Neuro Madness for Vital. It's a sound bank featuring 100 presets, accompanying samples, custom wavetables, and a lot of good stuff for Vital. And it's all about savage, mad neuro basses. Before starting the preset recreation, I've prepared a short musical example at 172 BPM. It's a sort of neurofunk example. The sound labeled red is the one that we are going to recreate today. It's a growl bass. And the other sounds, the other samples are sample loops taken from my other sound packs, for example, Mutant, Mecha, Throne, Angel, and so on. I'm going to play it. It's going to be pretty loud, so prepare for that. I play it in 3, 2, 1, let's go. Yeah, the sound we are going to recreate is this one. Let's hear it in isolation. And now we are going to open a new session in Ableton, a fresh new session, and start to recreate the sound from scratch. So here we are in a new fresh project in Ableton with the Hydra Roar preset opened. The preset we are going to dissect in this video, and I've chosen it because it's a sort of signature sound for me. Also, there are a lot of interesting tricks I want to discuss. And the skin you're seeing right now is a custom skin I've designed, and it's going to be given for free. The link is in the description of the video, as well as the custom wavetable used for this patch. The Revelation patch is one of the 50 wavetables I've designed for the pack Cypher. And of course the patch itself will be given. This is how it sounds like. I'm hitting C1 on the keyboard. C sharp 1. All the macros are turned off right now, also the mod wheel. We are not using them, but I will discuss how they can be useful for turning the patch into something new and exploit more modifications and other states of the current patch. So to start off, I'm going to initialize the patch by clicking here in the menu. So we start with the basic sawtooth wave. I'm going to modify envelope 1, that is responsible for the volume behavior of the patch. I'm going to set the attack to around 700 milliseconds. Linear shape is good for that. We want a full sustain, but more release, so I'm going to turn this up to around half a second or so. Perfect. In the global tab here, I'm going to drop it down to 1 voices, because it's going to be a monophonic patch. We don't want to play chords or simultaneous notes. The spread, I want it to be around 50%, because I want the patch to be mostly mono and mono compatible, because it's a bass sound. We are going to spread out the sound a bit more with the macros though. So starting with the choice of oscillators, it's going to be a multi-layered patch. So we want to exploit all three oscillators. Oscillator number one, it's going to be a rich sounding oscillator. Oscillator number two is what will give the main character to the patch, and we will see later why. And oscillator number three is what will fill out the budsy low end of the sound. So for oscillator number one, I've chosen the Revelation wavetable. It's a custom wavetable. I'm going to drop it down by 1 octave. It will sound very different when distorted later. For oscillator number two, this is very cool. I'm going to choose under the factory tab the harmonic series wavetable. Let's hear what happens when I move the wavetable position. Basically, we want to exploit this modulation, and together with the distortion later, this will make our patch scream in some ways. Also, we wanted to choose vocode under the spectral morph modes for oscillator number two to give a sort of human-like character to this wavetable, and we bring it up to around 75% or so. Also, we bring up the unison value to 5, so it will be more spread out. And the tune amount of unison, I want it to be very slight, around 3%. Perfect. For oscillator number 3, the sawtooth wave is great because it's rich sounding, and it will be a good solid foundation for the low end of the patch. We bring it down by an octave. Sorry. And this is it for the oscillator choice. By default, they are going to filter number 1, filter number 2, and effects. But we are not going to use filters on the main page, because we want first to distort the sound and then to filter the nasty overtones generated by extreme saturation. We can actually choose to route all three oscillators to the effects page, since we are not going to use the filters. Now we can move to the effects page. Let's start with the chorus. Let's adjust a bit the default settings. We want 16 voices, 2/1 the tempo. We want an higher depth, and also we want to filter out the lower frequencies so that we don't interfere with the low end of the patch. So we bring up the cutoff value a bit, like so. We actually don't want to hear the chorus straight away, because we will use it later with some macro modification, so we bring it down to 0%. Then we are going to use the delay. We want it to be in ping-pong mode, eighth note is fine. Feedback around 16% or so. Also, we want the sound of the delay to be darker, and so we are going to bring down the spread and turn down the cutoff so we don't miss those lower frequencies. Mix around 33% is fine. Then we are going to exploit the multiband compressor in Vital, which is basically an OTT configuration. It's actually smoother than the OTT found in Serum that for me it sounds more aggressive and sharper, but it's great nonetheless. Maybe we can adjust the bands later to have more low end, for example. For now, let's bring it to the default value. Then we are going to use distortion, which is the main core factor of this patch. In soft clip mode, mix at 100%, and then the drive around, yeah, we can start from 0 or 0.6, something like that. Because actually we want to bring in the distortion over time. In fact, we are going to use envelope number 1 to modulate the drive amount. And we can start here the sound. We bring down the output volume so we have some headroom. Perfect. Then we turn on the filter to remove extra frequencies that we don't need. We are going to choose a digital low pass filter at 12 dB of slope. This one is fine. Cut off at around 400 Hz. And resonance at 50% is perfect, because here the resonance paired with the distortion is what will give that tonality and screaming texture to the sound. Right now the sound is flat, but we want to move this filter so that those extra frequencies generated by distortion come in afterwards. We are going to use envelope number 1 again to modulate the filter, the cutoff, to around 18 or so. Then we want the oscillator number 2 to scan through its wavetable position. So we are going to use envelope number 1 and assign it to the wavetable position of oscillator number 2 to around halfway or so. So we start to get that screaming, high-pitched sound. Here how the sounds changes a lot just by selecting a different value of this modulation. Then we also want to spread out the sound of oscillator number 2 a bit more. So we are going to use again envelope number 1 and modulate the unison amount. So there is some interesting movement in the stereo field as well. And now we are going to also use another modulator, LFO number 1, in an orthodox way. What I mean is that we are not going to actually hear the modulation because we are going to set it really, really fast. What this will give is a grittier and more aggressive and unstable texture. We are going to select the growing oscillations in the default factory LFO shapes. We want the tempo to be at its fastest amount, at 1/64. Here we are at 172 BPM, so of course it will act faster at this BPM. We want the smooth to be at around 0.03. The modulation will be a bit smoother, so we are not hearing an obvious modulation. Then we are going to assign LFO number 1 to the filter cutoff as well as envelope number 1 and set it to around 12. So as you can hear, there is some unstable movement going on. Also, we want to bring in extra saturation with the drive knob in the filter. Yeah, and then the sound is really coming to life. Also the distortion drive as well. And then we want to bring in extra harmonics by the sawtooth wave. So we are going to modulate the level of oscillator number 3 a bit, like 0.1 or so. Then, to finish off the sound, we want to add a bit of reverb after the filter. We can adjust the slider of the higher band to be higher, so we have more high frequencies in the sound. Also, we can modify a little bit the amount of modulation so that the filter opens a little bit more. At around 20, I think it works well, because more than that, we have nasty frequencies that are not that good. So, this is the final patch. Now we want to modify and customize it a bit more with the macros. So for macro number 1, what I did was to assign it to the wavetable position of oscillator number 2 by full amount, so that we are getting that extreme scream character to the sound, and also assigned it to LFO number 1 smooth at around 0.5, so we get a smoother modulation of the LFO and a screamer result. That's why I have called it Scream, and this is how it sounds. For macro number 2, I wanted a wider alteration of the patch, so I assigned the macro to the spread by full amount, to LFO1 stereo to 0.35 or so. This is a very cool parameter to have. Basically, it offsets the LFO cycle between the left and the right channel, giving an interesting stereo movement. Also, I assigned the macro number 2 to the unison value by full amount, and also to the detune by a very small amount. And this is how it sounds. This is our wider macro. For macro number 3, I wanted an alteration of the patch which sounds more far away from the listener. So we are going to call it more far. And I have assigned it to the reverb mix to go to around 50%. Then I switch on the phaser, applying it before the reverb, using a slow movement of 32/1 and full depth. We bring down the mix amount since we don't want the phaser in our original patch, but just when we are going to use macro number 3. So we assign it to the mix to around 30% or so. Let's hear how it sounds so far. It's not far away since we have not used the filter, so we are going to apply to the cutoff to minus 22. And finally we can use the chorus around 10%. We also want more repetitions from the delay, so we assign to the feedback to around 0.1, not too much, to the tempo of the right or the left, and the mix to halfway. For our final macro number 4, I usually want to be more creative and alterate the patch in a more extreme way. I've called this macro the Cypher Macro to reflect the name of the Soundbank. For this variation, I wanted to employ the chorus, but in a growing way. So what we are going to do is assign envelope number 1 to the mix knob of the chorus. Then we are going to the matrix, find this modulation. This is the highlighted one. Then we are going to double click this slider and modulate it with the last macro. So basically this modulation of envelope number 1 opening the chorus is going to be active only when we use macro number 4. We want also more stereo spread for this alteration. We want 0 smooth for the LFO, so we are going to modulate it backwards. And then we are going to slow down the LFO speed. So finally we are going to hear the modulation of this LFO. In the effects, we are going also to use a flanger before the phaser and after the filter. 4/1 is fine, less depth at around 12% or so. And we want to modulate the mix amount to full. So we get this metallic movement effect, and we want the patch to be more rich in harmonics, so we bring up the cutoff from the filter. And finally we want to hear more sawtooth wave, so we are going to modulate the level a little bit. Here how the sound changed. Basically, the sound changes completely, so we get a more creative alteration of the patch. And to finish off, we are going also to exploit the mod wheel. We are going to select FM from oscillator number 3 under the wave morph tab of oscillator number 2. We bring it down because we don't want it to be active on the default state of the patch. and then we modulate with the mod wheel to go to around 85% or so. So let's hear how crazier now the patch gets. Yeah, FM coupled with this wavetable modulation of the harmonic series wavetable with all the distortion we've applied really helps to get that screaming result. So this is it. I truly hope you learned something new. I will give the resulting patch for free in the description of this video, coupled with the wavetable and the custom vital skin that you can download for free as well. Feel free to give a like and to subscribe to the channel to support it if you want more content like this in the future. Also feel free to comment if you have any questions regarding the process, regarding future video suggestions, and see you the next time.
Into the future.